I think we have to distinguish between what the EU institutions, especially Commission and Parliament, have done or have tried to do, and what the EU member states have then in turn accepted to do and to carry forward. From the EU institution point of view, I think they have put in place a series of appropriate measures, especially in terms of improving reception in frontline country, establishing the relocation program, which was supposed to be the compulsory mechanism of redistribution of those refugees arriving in Greece and Italy across the EU territory, and also, of course, the increase in resettlement cases out of Turkey and out of also other countries that have a large number of refugees on their territory, such as Lebanon and Jordan, with numbers of resettlement that between the various schemes, the sort of regular resettlement, family reunification, humanitarian visa, etc., is supposed to reach in 2017 close to 50,000 cases of resettlement. So all this, I think, are extremely positive measures that go in the right direction in terms of handling the increased refugee inflow into Europe. The problem has been, I think, and the challenges remain, that not all the EU member states have actually followed these lines from the EU institution, from the Commission. So you have had some countries that have been very active in relocation, some countries that have refused completely to accept any relocation cases, same for resettlement. And this has left the charge of the number of people arriving resting on the shoulders of some of EU member states, the minority in fact of EU member states, 6 or 7 out of the 27. And I think that has been the major issue and what has created a lot of the problematics that we are seeing today. And this is the challenge for the future, especially at a time when the Parliament in Brussels is rediscussing the new Common European Asylum Service system, which will include the recast of the Dublin regulation and a variety of other measures that are supposed to be able to better tackle similar inflow in the future. But for that to happen, then you need the 27 to be compact behind those principles. I think, well, one, as I said, is the need to ensure that the solidarity principle is applied by all member states. I think the recent experience has shown that such a principle cannot be applied on a voluntary basis, but needs to be applied in a compulsory basis, of course, with nuances depending on country. Not every country has the same ability and capacity and resources to accept the same number of refugees, so there has to be a differentiation in that sense, but it has to be applied by all. Otherwise, that, I think, undermines the very foundation of the EU. The other aspect is that, of course, refugees are one part of the flows that are arriving. A larger part, in fact, especially over the last year and a half, are migrants of all sorts of categories, from economic migrants to vulnerable migrants, victims of trafficking, unaccompanied minor, which is a large portion of those that have been arriving since 2016. And so for those group of people, there are different measures that are still needed. One, of course, is to try to increase the possibility of arriving legally into Europe, so that you would undermine, first of all, the business model of the trafficker, but also would reduce the need for a lot of these people to resort to trafficker, because alternative legal routes would be available. I would say two main priorities. The first is integration. I don't think the EU has done enough on integration, not just in terms of integrating the migrants or refugees arriving into our community, but also and especially in terms of supporting our community to understand what it means to have an increased number of foreigners integrating in our own social tissue, and what does it mean to move towards a multicultural, diverse, and very often multi-religious and multi-ethnic society. This is a gap that needs to be filled. Integration is a priority. Two ways street integration is a priority, so that both migrants and community learn to live together. There is a lot to be done there, and it's very important because not only makes the migrants and refugees that we have on our territory more productive for our society, but it also increases the level of security in our own town and communities, because you reduce the possibility of creating this group of marginalized, almost outcast people, which in turn can be fallen, prey of all sorts of criminal activities. So integration, I think, is the top priority, and it goes with a right-based approach. It goes with ensuring the enjoyment of not only basic rights, but also access to social services, etc., from school to health to all sorts of other services that are available into our community. So that is a priority. And the second one is what you mentioned. Europe is running out of time to recognize the absolute need to sustain their economy and their social system and the pension system, to actually allow for migrants at all skill levels to come legally to Europe based on the actual evidence-based need of the various labor market in the various European countries. That is a must that has to happen as quickly as possible, because demographically the European population is going down rapidly, and so the shortfall in the labor supply chain in Europe will be enormous in just a few years, and for that we will need to offset this gap, both in terms of numbers and in terms of skill required, through legal channel of migration, and I think that has to become very soon not even a matter of debate anymore, but a clear policy indication, unless we want to risk to have major problem in sustaining our current model.